fine shit mean, hey, you fine as hell. No, I'm just saying. No, I'm explaining. I'm explaining.
What happens when a joke goes a little too far? Well, if you're Kevin Hart and Druski at the 2025 BET Awards, it almost leads to a punch being thrown backstage. What started as a playful moment quickly escalated when Druski dropped a compliment about Hart's wife, Iniku, and Kevin was not having it. But don't worry, it's all in good fun. Or is it? In the world of celebrity antics, anything can happen, especially when two comedians like Hart and Druski are in the mix. But this wasn't just another bit on stage. This was a real, unscripted moment that had fans on the edge of their seats, proving once again that at the BET Awards, anything can go down, whether it's in front of the cameras or behind the scenes. Stay tuned to find out what went down when Kevin Hart almost lost his cool over Druski's harmless, but maybe not so harmless compliment. Trust me, this backstage drama will have you laughing, cringing, and maybe even gasping a little. The 2025 BET Awards were off to a bang, and the man behind the mic? None other than Kevin Hart. As the host of the night, Hart wasted no time setting the tone with his signature humor. Quick, sharp, and filled with unexpected jabs. Opening the show, he dove right into the drama that often surrounds these high-profile events, pulling no punches when it came to celebrity scandals and the chaos that always follows these events. We're learning a lot about people at these after-parties. That's where things get slippery, literally and figuratively, Hart teased, slyly referencing the infamous Sean Diddy Combs scandal that had the internet buzzing. The audience was hooked instantly, hanging on every word. It wasn't just a standard monologue, it was classic Hart, taking aim at the industry's messy underbelly, while keeping things lighthearted enough to make everyone laugh. But the real excitement? That would come after the jokes died down, and things took a turn backstage, when the cameras weren't rolling. That's when the infamous "fine shit" comment from Druski came into play, setting off a chain of events that no one could have predicted. What started as a simple, playful exchange between two comedians quickly escalated into something much more intense, all thanks to one word and one very protective husband. While the audience was still buzzing from Hart's opening jokes, backstage was buzzing for a different reason. The real action was happening away from the spotlight, where two comedians, Kevin Hart and Druski, were hanging out and chatting casually. The energy backstage was light, fun, and full of comedic banter. But little did anyone know, a seemingly harmless comment would soon stir up tension. As the story goes, Druski, always the Joker, was streaming live on Twitch, letting his audience in on the behind-the-scenes moments of the night. That's when Iniku Hart, Kevin's wife, overheard Druski using a phrase that many might find flattering, but others, especially a protective husband, might find crossing the line. I heard they say, "fine sh." What is that? Iniku innocently asked, curious about the phrase that Druski had just thrown out. Druski, ever the smooth talker, immediately jumped into explanation mode. "Oh, fine shite means you fine as hell," he explained, casually throwing out a compliment in his signature laid-back style. But what was intended to be a lighthearted moment quickly shifted when Iniku looked to Kevin for clarification. Kevin, standing nearby, could hear everything unfolding. The conversation wasn't just playful anymore, it was personal, especially considering who the comment was about. The stage was set, and tension was building up without anyone even realizing it. It was supposed to be a harmless exchange, but Druski's words had now put him in the line of fire. And that's when things got interesting. At first, Druski had no idea what was about to hit him. He thought he was just explaining a harmless phrase to Iniku, but he didn't account for the most important factor in the room, Kevin Hart. As Druski casually explained that "fine shit" was just another way of saying someone was fine as hell, the humor was lost on Kevin in that moment. For Hart, this wasn't just about a funny word. It was about his wife. Druski trying to stay relaxed. "It's just a compliment, bro. You know how it is. It's like when someone calls you a bad chick or looking fire." He shrugged it off, thinking it was all good. But Kevin wasn't laughing. In fact, his body language said it all. Hart was no longer smiling, and the mood had shifted from playful banter to something more serious. Iniku, sitting there, wasn't sure what to make of the situation. "I heard them say it, but I didn't know what it meant. Is that a compliment?" she asked, still trying to understand the term. It was clear Iniku wasn't bothered by it, but Kevin's protective instincts kicked in immediately. The playful atmosphere had suddenly turned into something a little more charged. Kevin's gaze locked on Druski, and within seconds, the energy backstage completely changed. As Druski stood there, still smiling and trying to stay cool, Kevin turned to him sharply and said, "What the fuck say?" His voice had the perfect blend of confusion and confrontation. It was clear that this wasn't just about the word anymore. Hart was watching his wife, and now Druski was in the hot seat. Druski, sensing the change in the air, quickly put his hands up in a defensive gesture. "I'm explaining, bro, just chill. It's not like that," he said, his tone trying to smooth things over. But Kevin wasn't having it. The tension was palpable, and the two comedians were now at a crossroads. Was this going to stay a joke, or was something more about to happen? The moment was escalating quickly, and all eyes were on Kevin, wondering just how far this playful beef would go. But what happened next would leave everyone stunned. The moment Druski backed up with his hands raised, it was clear this wasn't just a small misunderstanding. Kevin Hart wasn't laughing anymore. This was his wife we were talking about. The casual atmosphere backstage had instantly transformed into a tense standoff, and the audience watching from Druski's Twitch livestream could feel the shift too. It was all fun and games until someone called someone else's wife fine as hell. Kevin, already riled up by the conversation, turned sharply toward Druski, his voice heavy with irritation. "What the f*** you say?" he shot back, his words dripping with a mixture of disbelief and challenge. It was a rare side of Kevin Hart to show, especially when it came to one of his fellow comedians. For a split second, Druski froze. Was this part of the bit? Was Kevin still joking? The atmosphere was thick with uncertainty as Hart's stare held Druski in place, clearly waiting for an answer. The tension in the air was no longer playful. It was palpable. As the crowd of backstage, crew and fans gathered around, Druski's usual easygoing demeanor vanished. His expression shifted from amused to cautious, his body pressing back against the wall. "I'm just explaining, bro, chill," he said, trying to diffuse the situation, but there was no denying the tension now. Druski wasn't afraid of Hart, but he knew when to pick his battles. And this one wasn't going in his favor. Hart's gaze didn't soften. "You say my wife is fine as hell. You better be prepared to explain yourself." "I don't play about mine," Kevin added, looking directly into the camera. His tone was firm, but there was a flicker of humor in his eyes, like he was trying to keep it light, but the words were loaded with seriousness. The backstage energy had completely shifted. There was no more joking around. Kevin's protective instincts had kicked in, and Druski knew he needed to handle this carefully. But the way Kevin was looking at him, it was clear this wasn't just some funny back and forth. It was personal. "I ain't afraid to die about mine," Kevin shot back, his words carrying weight beyond the joke. In that moment, it wasn't just about the term fine shit. It was about respect, boundaries, and what Kevin was willing to stand up for. Druski, now fully aware of the gravity of the situation, took a step back and apologized, his hands still raised in defense. "Aight, you got me, bro. You right," he conceded, realizing the line had been crossed. Kevin wasn't just the funny guy on stage, he was a husband, and that mattered more than any joke. The tension slowly diffused, but the moment was far from over. Druski knew better than anyone. Messing with Kevin Hart's wife was no small matter. What started as a joke turned into a real lesson on respect, both on and off the camera. As the tension began to settle, it became clear that what had unfolded backstage wasn't just another part of a comedy bit. The stakes were higher than anyone initially thought. Kevin Hart, known for his quick wit and playful jabs, had just shown a completely different side of himself, one that was fiercely protective of his family. Druski, still trying to navigate the situation, attempted to backpedal, but the damage had been done. "Yo, I didn't mean nothing by it," Druski said, trying to lighten them, but there was a sincerity in his tone now. It wasn't just about a joke gone wrong. It was about real boundaries being tested in a very public space. "I'm just here to explain, bro. Chill." Druski, his hands still up in a sign of surrender, as if hoping that the seriousness in Kevin's eyes would fade. But Kevin wasn't going to let this slide so easy. Hart wasn't about to brush off what could have been seen as a minor comment, not when it involved his wife. His loyalty was clear, and the way he spoke to Druski wasn't just as a fellow comedian, it was as a husband who wasn't afraid to stand up for the people he loved. Heat of the moment, Kevin's words echoed through the room. "I ain't afraid to die about mine." It wasn't just a figure of speech. It was an intense reminder that for Kevin Hart, family comes before fame, before comedy, before anything else. The energy in the room was palpable, and Druski, who had always been known for his laid-back persona, now found himself on the defensive. But it wasn't just the words that made the situation so intense, it was the genuine emotion behind them. Kevin Hart wasn't just playing around, he was making it clear that this wasn't the kind of joke you could just shrug off. And while Druski might have been laughing just moments before, he could see that Kevin wasn't in the mood for jokes anymore. This wasn't about one phrase. It was about respect. The whole room, which had been filled with laughter and chaos moments before, now seemed frozen in time. Everyone waited, unsure of what was going to happen next. Would this turn into a full-blown confrontation, or would the two comedians manage to laugh it off as they usually do? It felt like a tipping point. One word, one moment, the audience was left holding their breath. Would this escalate further, or would they defuse the situation before anything else went? What was certain, however, was that both Kevin and Druski had crossed a line, albeit unknowingly, into territory that was much more personal than either of them expected. The dynamic had shifted, and whatever came next would be a defining moment in their friendship. As the intensity of the moment began to fade, Druski, realizing the seriousness of Kevin Hart's reaction, took a step back and assessed the situation. He wasn't in the clear yet. The lighthearted tone that had initially defined their relationship was gone, replaced by an unspoken understanding that some boundaries, no matter how small they might seem, could be easily crossed in the heat of the moment. Druski wasn't about to escalate things further, especially not in front of the cameras. "Nate, you got me, bro." "You right," Druski said, his voice now softer, more respectful. He knew when to back off, and this was one of those moments. His usual bravado melted away as he faced the reality of what had just transpired. The respect for Kevin Hart was clear in his words and actions. He didn't want any more heat on this situation. Kevin, for his part, seemed to take a step back as well. His shoulders relaxed, the tension easing out of him as the reality of the moment set in. Kevin was known for being larger than life, for his humor and his quick comebacks, but what this moment showed was his capacity for both loyalty and humility. He wasn't afraid to speak his mind, but he was also willing to forgive, especially when it came to those who mattered to him. "I ain't trippin', man," Kevin finally said with a laugh, though the underlying seriousness was still there. "Just respect the boundaries, that's all." The comment hung in the air as a reminder that even those lighthearted banter minutes. Druski nodded, acknowledging Kevin's words, and the atmosphere between them shifted back to a playful camaraderie they were known for. Both comedians shared a brief, knowing look, one that only two people who had navigated this kind of awkward tension could understand. The whole thing had been a comedy of errors, but it was also a lesson in understanding the line between humor and respect. The cameras may have stopped rolling, but the lesson was clear. Even the funniest jokes can take a turn when personal boundaries come into play. For Kevin Hart, family would always come first, and that wasn't up for debate. Druski, for all his charm and laid-back demeanor, had learned a valuable lesson that night. Sometimes, a little respect goes a long way. As the dust settled and the two comedians joked about the incident with the crew, everyone involved knew that the 2025 BET Awards would be remembered for more than just the red carpet moments or the performances. It was the night when a backstage moment between two friends, one that could have easily turned ugly, became a reminder of the importance of respect, humor, and boundaries, even in the world of celebrity chaos. And while fans might laugh about it now, everyone knew that Kevin Hart's protective instinct was as real as it gets. As for Druski, he'd think twice before calling anyone's wife fine shit again, especially when that person was Kevin Hart. As the night wound down and the drama of the backstage incident began to fade, one thing remained clear. The unexpected showdown between Kevin Hart and Druski had added a new layer to the 2025 BET Awards. What started as a joke turned into a defining moment of respect and loyalty. It wasn't just about two comedians clashing over a misinterpreted phrase. It was about the unspoken code of boundaries and how even in the world of endless celebrity antics, some lines are non-negotiable. But this moment left fans with more than just a story to laugh about. It raised questions about celebrity relationships and how much personal life should be involved in public humor. How much is too much? And what happens when the joke isn't received as intended? In this case, Kevin Hart stood firm in his role as a husband, protecting his family from what he saw as a boundary crossed. As for Druski, the incident was a reminder that even in the world of comedy, where everything is fair game, there's always room for respect. It also showed that behind the jokes, there's a genuine connection and understanding between the two comedians. Druski had learned a valuable lesson. Comedy has its limits, especially when it comes to family.